While we sleep, the guardians of the night take to the streets, having said goodbye to those they love. Each other knowing they may never say these words again, they face the evil that we run from. They dedicate their lives to those that would hate them because they wear the badge. They wear the badge not for the glory or recognition, but because they were born to honor the thin blue line. This is the LEO First Podcast. We'll talk to the men and women in law enforcement, those that have retired, and anyone who's impacted by law enforcement. We'll peel back the curtain, and you'll get the real stories. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Every law enforcement officer has a story to tell. Get ready to hear from the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for their communities and their country. Welcome to the LEO First Podcast. Now, here's your host, Michael Laidler.
Hey everybody, it's Michael Laidler, your host of the LEO First Podcast, and I'm here for another amazing show with a person that did something pretty cool. He reached out to me via email, explained his story, the purpose of why he wanted to be on the show, and I really admire that because I don't get too many guests that just outreach me and explain everything that they've had go on in their law enforcement career. And it was quite refreshing to see that because, as you all know, one of the goals of this show, or if I'm speaking on stage or coaching somebody, is just to highlight what people do. Is that in and out of uniform, people go through things, and we shouldn't hide away what we do because that's not. I don't think it's a service to people when we do that. And the fact that he reached out and shared his story with me right out the gate, I think is a testimony not just to what he believes in himself, but also what this show is doing. Because I do want to spread these messages. I do want to highlight all the good work people do, but I just want people to know they're not alone in this process. Whatever you have going through, whether it's good or it's bad, it's just not you. So today we have someone that has now been a retired law enforcement lieutenant since 2021. He spent 33 years in the industry, mainly in the San Francisco Bay Area, worked multiple capacities as a field training officer, gang enforcement, plainclothes, canine officer training. He worked in different units like the homeless outreach unit, and also he worked in the pre-arrest diversion program. Now, our guest had gone through some tough times as well, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to touch on that during this episode. But whatever you all hear, just know that what he has been through could have happened to any of us. And there's people that are going through stuff like this right now that are fearful of what may happen next. And if you are listening and you might be going through this, or you're someone listening and you know someone going through this, share the story, because if he's on our episode today, that means that he has overcome some of these things. And that's all about what we're trying to do. Show people that just because you have a bad day or multiple bad days, there's still more hope. And there's all types of ways to remedy that in a positive way. But one way is hearing people's story. And it sounds kind of weird in the beginning because, especially in the law enforcement industry, there's always been the stigma, and it's still here today. It's getting better, is that we don't want to show vulnerability. But vulnerability is part of human nature. And sometimes when we hide that part of who we are, it's only destructive to ourselves. So, needs to say, y'all heard my little early morning pitch, and right now in Texas, where I'm recording from, it's 7, where he's recording from, it's 5. So he got up even earlier to make sure you all heard his message, and hopefully you find some inspiration. So all that said, I've given him an amazing introduction, and hopefully I warmed you guys up to him. But our guest today is Davin Cole. Now, he did tell me it's Davin, not Dave out. So I did have to look at his name. And when you see the spelling of it, you're going to see it as well. You're like, what is this? So it's Davin. So Davin, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for waking up early with us. Thank you for recovering from your Long Beach day yesterday. What do you want to talk about today?
Thank you for having me on the show, Michael. You know what? I want to talk about my non-traditional way of retiring from law enforcement and the struggles that I went through and how I got over them.
All right, let's talk about it. So wherever you want to start, we're all ears.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, 33-year veteran of law enforcement. I worked in the San Francisco Sheriff's Department for 4 years and then went over to the police department and did my last 29 years there. San Francisco is kind of non-traditional. We're one city, one county, so we don't have unincorporated areas. So our sheriff's department was primarily corrections and the civil and the criminal courts. I grew up in San Francisco, always wanted to work there, kind of fulfilled my dream. The only other thing I really wanted to do once I got into law enforcement was work in the K-9 unit. The way we work here is once you finish probation, you put your name on the waiting list for any of the specialized units, motors, mounted unit, dogs. I did that. My name came up. I went down to the unit. I was down there for 15 years. The last 10 years, I was in charge of all training. So I was in charge of the selection and purchase of the dogs and the training of any new dogs and any new officers that came down to the unit. And that's kind of where my story begins. For any of the K-9 handlers out there, you kind of know that caveat of it's not but it's when you'll get bit. I mean, everybody has that story where, maybe their dog came up on them, they got nipped in the hand, or there's a training scenario and the dog missed the equipment. In my case, it was a pretty bad bite.
I was bit twice. My dog bit me twice in my career when I had a Belgian Malinois. So yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, nothing I needed stitchers or anything for, but I'm looking at the scar right now on my thigh and then the scar on my hand. So I've been bit twice. So yes.
Yeah, I'll have to send you that picture. Yeah, we are doing obedience. I always say this jokingly, right? If you call it tactical obedience, it sounds really cool. So we're doing tactical obedience, and kind of through no fault. There were some training things going on that I was unaware of that the handler was doing, but the dog thought, I think the dog was kind of conditioned that this particular area we were training in, that it was going to be bite work and not obedience. And he was off leash, which was part of the obedience. And the dog, I was behind a tree, and the dog came around and grabbed onto my calf and did the prey shake, and ended up leaving about a golf ball size hole in my leg. It was really bad. Ended up 3 days later back in the hospital with an infection. Spent just over a week in the hospital. Got out. Was in chronic pain for almost 3 years. I was in chronic pain. I had nerve damage there. There was some scar tissue built up on the nerve bundle in my calf. There's pretty much pain every day. High doses of opioids. Did that for 3 years. It's very mentally exhausting to go through something like that. It really takes its toll on you. I don't wish chronic pain upon anyone, especially, if you're still a working first responder or a firefighter or a cop. You have our department policies an 8-hour window from the last time you take a prescription pain med. So there's some days I just had to kind of work through the pain. But fortunately, 3 years down the road, they found a surgeon who was able to go in there, and she repaired the damage, knocked out what I pretty much thought was 95% of the pain. And as they started to wean me off of the pain meds, I realized that I didn't want to stop taking them. I enjoyed I called them my happy pills. And I've talked to a lot of first responders, and when it comes to the opioid pain medication, it was slightly different than the alcohol, but it puts you in a good mood. And I didn't know back then that I had undiagnosed complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which led to that. But I didn't want to stop taking them. And this was right around the time that, because of the surgery, it was a workers' comp case. Workers' comp closed it out, paid me off. Went back to my family doctor and just told him, he didn't really know that much, as it's they didn't exchange the medical files as much back then. He didn't have access to it. So I just told him, yeah, I'm still in pain. And so he just, okay, what do they have you on? He just kept writing me the prescriptions. And that continued for a total of 10 years. Probably the last few years is when I added on alcohol, started knocking down, the last 6 months of this whole ordeal, I was knocking down a half a bottle of 750 milliliter vodka every night, on top of the pills. It was, you find that when you're an addict, you make up these, you give yourself a lot of justifications, your excuses. You know, one of the big excuses was work. I don't drink at work. I don't show up to work drunk. I don't show up to work hungover. I don't use the pills at work. So I'm okay. You know, I'm just doing this at night and on my days off. And even on my days off, I didn't drink during the day. I only drank at night, which is, as I found out later, is a trauma response of just drinking at night by myself alone. I'd also had some severe depression. I had become suicidal. Every night when I would drink, I would just think of ways of trying to kill myself that nobody would know it was a suicide. The final thing I'd come up with was, I was going to drive off of a cliff. There's over here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we're right near the ocean, and there's some roads that one area, ironically called Devil's Slide, and a lot of cars go off of that cliff, and it's pretty much a zero survival rate. And I thought that's what I was going to do. But, I had my wife and my 2 daughters, and I just didn't want to do that to them. And I kept telling myself that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But I was done. I was done with the addiction. I tried to stop drinking the alcohol. I tried to stop taking the pills. I couldn't do it. And I couldn't ask for help. Like a lot of first responders, I just felt like I needed to do this myself. I'm the one that comes in and takes care of everything. Fast forward to November 2021. It's coming up on 3 years now. Short version is I was almost out of pills. When you're an addict, you get creative on how to get pills from other people, family members, other cops who they don't like it because it makes them nauseous, and hey, you can have mine. But I had none of those options. And, looking back now, I know it was a cry for help, but at the time, it just was that addictive thinking. And my thought process was, all right, I'm going to run out of pills in a day. In 3 days from now, I'm supposed to be on a flight to Mexico for a destination wedding for some family members. My refill's not due for another 2 weeks. What am I going to do? Because if anyone's ever been through a withdrawal of opioids, it's about that 3rd day that it really gets bad. That's when you're basically sitting on the toilet all day and laying in bed like you got the worst flu in the world. And I'm thinking, that's right when I'm supposed to be on a plane to Mexico. I can't have that. And my solution was to go rob a pharmacy. So I got off duty, went home, tried to get some pills from a family member who didn't have any to give me, and decided, well, then I'm just going to have to go rob a pharmacy because that's the only solution I could think of at the time. Walked into this pharmacy, handed them a note, sat there and watched the pharmacist call 911. I saw her get on the phone. I saw her call 911, and I didn't move. If I had left right at that moment, I would have never been caught. But I did it. I stood there and I waited, and they handed me a big bag of pills, 9 bottles to be exact. And when I walked out, the police department was right there waiting for me. It was the city I live in, of course. I didn't go someplace else. I went to a pharmacy less than a mile and a half from my house. But yeah, I walked out, and there was the police department. And the next thing you know, I'm sitting in the back of a police car, bawling my eyes out, thinking, this is it. I just ruined everything. And got taken to the county jail. Thought about hanging myself. Took a phone cord 3 separate times and wrapped it around my neck and didn't. I did bring a gun with me, not for the robbery, but to kill myself. I told myself that if the police show up, I was going to shoot myself in the head because I wasn't going to jail. Obviously, I didn't, thank God. Yeah. I've since talked to some of the officers that arrested me. When they reviewed the BWC, they didn't know I had a gun until they had me cuffed. But once they reviewed the BWC, they said, yeah, you reached for it like twice. And I don't even remember that. So God stopped me. I know that. I know that was not God's plan for me. My department took care of me. They allowed me to retire. I got to keep my lieutenant's pay. They even sent me to the 30-day treatment. They were there the next morning with, we call it our behavioral science unit. It's our version of EAP. Honestly, probably the industry standard. If SFPD does anything right, our EAP is really good.
Good.
They were there, no questions asked. They just wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Got me a bed right away in this treatment, and just kind of kept an eye on me after that. Spent a year relapsing on the alcohol a couple times because I had no idea what was going to go on in the court case. My attorney was trying to get a feel for the judge. I know there was a lot of phone calls made down to the district attorney. Due to my work in the homeless outreach unit, I made a lot of friends in the city hall in San Francisco and the command staff, and so they're calling down there to tell the DA, "Hey, this is a good guy. Don't hammer him." But on December 23rd of 2022, I was sentenced to 3 years felony probation and a year in the county jail. And I did 6 months in the county jail in solitary confinement. Got out just over a year ago on Father's Day, and have spent this last little bit over a year now. First few months really focusing on my mental health. It was during that 1 year period that I was diagnosed with the PTSD, or the complex PTSD.
Right.
But now I really focus on getting out and telling my story and trying to break this stigma of A, asking for help, and B, it's okay to not be okay. You're not broken. You just, addiction's an illness and PTSD is an injury. And both of them you can recover from. And so that's my focus. And that's why I wanted to be on your show, because you have a great audience and I want people to hear that, listen, you're okay. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're in the thick of things, it's hard to recognize some of the signs. It's hard to recognize some of the negative coping mechanisms that we use. But once again, one of the parts of the show is like, hey, hopefully if somebody hears this and then they go through something, they kind of go back on listening to you and saying, you know what? With the right mindset, with the right support system, with the right awareness of what's going on around me, maybe I won't make that choice. So throughout that journey, um, did you find one area that really helped you not overcome, but get through some of these things that you had gone through?
Yeah, you kind of said it when you said a good support system. I mean, this is a journey you cannot do alone, and it goes back again to the struggles. You can't keep these struggles to yourself. And once you take that step on your journey of recovery, of getting through the PTSD or the addiction or whatever's currently going on in your life that's causing that amount of distress, you've got to have support. I tell cops this all the time. Like, if you're fighting a parolee by yourself in an alley, you'd grab you'd grab that radio and you'd call for help. You wouldn't hesitate. But when you're struggling with something like this, you do. And you need that help and you need that support, and surround yourself with a great team. You might have to do the work on your own. Hopefully your department, or you'll find resources online that'll push you in the right direction. But this is not something you're going to do on your own.
So with that in mind, where did you, so obviously this is fairly recent. So you said,
Yes.
you said 10 years and you just been out a little over a year. In your mindset during those 10 years, when you found yourself um, utilizing the prescriptions and stuff to just, even when you were off of leave, or once you were relieved from the doctor's oversight, was there any time or any moment that you said, man, I should probably tell somebody? And if that did come up, what stopped you?
Oh, constantly. I'd say for the last, and it sounds funny, but for the last 6 years of it, I was constantly telling myself that. Constantly going like, you need to stop. You need to go ask for help. You need to go tell your wife what's going on. My wife, bless her, she is a true saint. And my daughters, I put them through a lot. And I'll be making this up to them for the rest of my life. But she knew about the alcohol, but she didn't even know how to get me to stop. She didn't know how to approach me and to get me the help I needed. And a lot of it would stop me. And like I said, I felt like I should be able to do this on my own, right? There's some childhood trauma. It's something I've found out with a lot of first responders. A lot of us seem to have some childhood trauma.
I do.
And yeah, And a big part of mine, though, was that I had to learn to take care of myself alone at a very young age, pretty much from the age of 12. No fault of my mom. My mom was a great mom, but she was a single mom of 3 boys. And my older brothers moved out when I was 12. And so from the age of 12, I had to raise myself. My mom had to work nights. And so, I've always had this, I don't go to anybody for help. And now I'm a cop. I don't go to anybody for help. Now I'm a sergeant. I'm a boss. Now I'm a lieutenant in charge of this homeless outreach unit. I'm still helping people. We had we had a pre-arrest diversion program to get people who are committing low-level crimes out of their substance abuse disorder. And I was spending, as the sergeant of the unit, I'd spend a week trying to talk someone into this program. Like, you need to get sober. They've got the great resources. I'm going to get you a case manager in 30 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And yet I'd go home and look at myself in the mirror and be like, wow, bro, you just spent that whole week talking so-and-so into this program. You can't even talk yourself into a simple phone call that will have no repercussions. You just call down that behavioral science unit, and that sergeant in that unit will have you in a bed, and the department's going to give you 30 days off, no questions asked, no repercussions. You'll come right back to your next assignment where you were. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't. It was the admission that I had a problem. It was the struggle of, why am I doing this? Like, I had a great marriage. I still have a great marriage. My daughters were doing great. I was kind of the pinnacle of my career. I was never somebody who thought, I really wasn't going to advance in the ranks. I was just going to leave as the most senior canine handler in the department and be done with it. Yeah. But I was like, I'm getting close to retirement. I'd like a little extra money. And then once I got in the sergeant's position, and they put me in this acting lieutenant's position, I was like, oh, I love this. And next thing you know, I'm on the lieutenant's exam. I'm next up to get promoted. I realized I'll be eligible for the captain's exam as soon as I get this permanent promotion. All right, I'll leave it a captain. In our department, it's a 43 grand a year jump in pay from lieutenant to captain. So I was like, yeah, that's a nice incentive to stick around for the captain's exam. But I just felt like I have to do this. Davin, you're the one who's going to solve this. No one else knows you. No one else is going to know how to help you. And the other thing was, I really didn't know what help looked like. And I think that's something we miss out a lot, is we tell people where to get help. We tell you who to call, but we don't have people come in and tell you, this is what help looks like. But more importantly, this is what it looks like at the end, where you could go through something like I went through and be sitting here right now, smiling, happy, proud of myself. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm proud of where I am right this moment, right here, right now. And the beauty of sobriety, the beauty of going, hey, I'm not broken. I'm a normal human being who is exposed to very abnormal crap for 33 years, but I'm okay. It's okay not to be okay. And I'm not perfect, but I'm also not completely broken. And so that's my message to anybody that's struggling. Is like, listen, once you get that help, you're going to come to a point in your life where you're just going to be like, wow, this is such a beautiful place to be. And I'm so happy I got here. And I'm glad I reached out. I don't want them to go through what I went through. Like I said, don't have the untraditional retirement that I had, where you're blasted all over the news, where you're on the morning news and the 5 o'clock news and in the newspapers. And yeah, you don't want that. You want to get the help, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
And yeah, I think all the factors you just brought up, as far as the stigma goes, as far as I can do it on my own and not realizing what the resources there, I believe, and this is like podcast. Well, by the time I push yours out, this might be number 70 or 75 or something between those numbers. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of people come and tell me that. And then I was just in South Carolina this past weekend, and I had people come to me like, man, I know the resources are there, but sometimes it's hard to implement it. And then you being in a leadership role, that it only adds to everything else. And then, like you said, you're leading people in a certain direction, but you're not leading yourself. And then you start thinking, well, if I'm looking this one way, how can I tell them to do this? And then what are they going to look at me? Not realizing, once again, that level of vulnerability, that's what they actually need in that moment. They need to say, they need Sergeant Cole, Lieutenant Cole, Captain Cole to say, hey, man, I struggle too, but I sought help. I reached out to other people, and that's why I'm here. But, it's hard. we see it more now. I say as an industry as we're progressing, but there's still kind of like that other side, like, well, what happens if I do it? But I would rather have this conversation with you right now, and you lost your career or you got out of law enforcement versus you not tell anybody and you do the worst possible thing and you remove yourself from this planet.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I'd rather you seek help and quit or seek help and just say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this, versus you let the pressures hit you so hard that now you're not here and you leave home a great wife. You leave home great children, great daughters, because that's not really worth it. So, with that said, and I know people are going to find amazing value in what you're saying because there's everybody's struggling through something right now. And hopefully they hear your story like, you know what, this is going to be the day one that I actually go get the help. If someone was looking to reach out to you and they were wanting to hear more of your story or just want to hear more about you, how would they do that?
Yeah. But right now, the best two ways are either through my LinkedIn account. You can just find me on LinkedIn by my name, Davin Cole. Or you can just reach out to me via email. It's contact Davin Cole at Gmail. I'm still building up my social media. I realize that my Facebook and my Instagram are still tied into my personal stuff. So I'll be revamping that a little bit. But those right now are the two best ways. I come out and I give public speaking. I'll talk to your agency, your organization. I've talked to a lot of peer support classes. If you have a podcast, if there's any other podcasters out there, I'd love to be on your show and share my story. Or if you just want to talk and need help or want to know what you need to do to get that help you need, reach out to me. Like I said, LinkedIn or my email. I'll answer each and every one. I don't ignore any of those. And once I kind of vet you, I'll give you my personal phone number. And yeah, that's the best way.
And trust me, I people will reach out to you. And I honestly, with your Instagram and some of the other stuff, I wouldn't even. I mean, unless you have like very personal photos on there, I would just start adding to what you have because at the end of the day, you create these personal photos when you're in law enforcement. I mean, and hey, trust me, social media wasn't around 33 years ago, so anything you created within that time period is on social media. So for me, like my current page, when I started my current page, it was like I've always had like a blend of different things, whether it was just spending time with my family or vacationing, eating, smoking cigars. And now it's more law enforcement, like more business stuff, more speaking, more podcasting, more what's going on now. But every once in a while, you'll see me still trickle in different things because I still want to show people there's a personal tie to me. I still want to show that, hey, I'm still doing things like you being on the beach yesterday. Like, hey, I still squeeze things like that in there because at the end, I don't want people to think that I'm just a robot that just does podcast every day or that just do speaking. No, I still I go grocery shopping like you go. I want to have fun. I want to have work-life balance, but it kind of shows the blend. So with that, since now they know where they can find you, and you may have already done it, but I want to be very specific on this. Any final words?
My final word is, again, and I've said it over and over again, it's okay not to be okay. I'll tell you the one thing that and my wife has pushed me towards this, and you see it kind of right here above my head, amor fati, love your faith. It's stoicism. I think it applies to law enforcement. It definitely is applied to me. Life happens that you have no control over. So you can either push back against it or you can learn to love it and make it work for you. And that's what I've done. So that's kind of my philosophy in life.
I love that. Either push back or make it work for you. And I think that's the important side to everything we do is making things work because when we don't make things work, we just find ourselves unnecessarily struggling. For all of you that had a chance to either listen to the podcast or I might do the video, I never know. I definitely have reels of it. I hope you enjoyed it because the insight that you get from real people going through real stuff and having real positive solutions at the end is vital, not just to those in the uniform, but those that are maybe thinking about getting to the uniform, those that just don't wear it anymore, or those that have never worn it but were curious. These are the stories that are real. These are the situations that highlight the importance of understanding how people go through things. I hope you all enjoyed this. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Whether this is on YouTube, well, this will be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. When I post about it on LinkedIn, Instagram, make sure you guys share it with somebody, especially if any of this story resonates with you, because whether we know it or not, we're all each other's keeper. And the goal is to obviously share whatever positive experiences we have, but also share the reality of what can happen in tough times. But once again, I hope you all enjoyed it. I know I did. I always enjoy great guests with great information that can share real life stories. Make sure you all reach out. If not, all of you have a great day and be safe.
You've been listening to the LEO First Podcast. Michael has been in law enforcement since 2005. He's worked for 3 law enforcement agencies in 3 different states. He's a professional speaker who travels the country teaching about leadership development and self-awareness. And he's the author of a book called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The 3 Key Principles for Self-Awareness. It's Michael's passion to bring law enforcement members' stories to the front, so you get the real and raw take. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Michael on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Michael Laidler, on Twitter at Michael A. Laidler, on Facebook at Michael Laidler Leadership. Send an email to michael@michaellaidler.com and hit the website at michaellaidler.com. See you next time on the LEO First Podcast.
Find vehicle advising